Hi there, I'm Nick Ravelis, the Director of Education and Community Engagement for San Diego Opera, and you can call me Dr. Nick. You have tickets to come to the student dress rehearsal of one of the greatest operas ever written, Don Giovanni by Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. Now you've probably heard about Mozart. He's often considered one of the world's great geniuses because of the wonderful music that he wrote. He's often mentioned right up there in company with Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, and Albert Einstein. He was writing music and playing the piano at the age of 4, and his father, a musician himself, was taking the young Mozart on tour throughout Europe, showing him off to royalty and popular audiences as a great child prodigy. As Mozart grew older, though, what he really wanted to do was write operas, and when he was about 11, he wrote his very first one. When he became an adult, that drive to write operas was a desire that just got stronger and stronger. He wanted to tell exciting stories on stage, stories driven by music and the singing of the characters in the story. So in 1780, at the age of 24, he moved to Vienna, Austria, a city that could be called the capital of opera at that time. It was here that he wrote his greatest works, among them the opera Don Giovanni. The story of Don Giovanni is actually really ancient, probably originating in Spanish folklore as the story of Don Juan. The first theatrical version of the story arrived in the 1600s, and it so captured the imagination of playwrights and musicians that many of them wrote their own versions of the story. It was even a puppet play that traveled with a portable stage from city to city, the story being told by hand puppets depicting each of the characters. The story, very simply, was about a nobleman, a don, which in Spanish is kind of a prince, a duke, or a baron, named Juan, or Don Juan. Being a nobleman, he's in a position where he should be a person of noble virtues, right? When people thought of a prince or a duke, they immediately thought he should be forthright, courageous, honest, polite, loving, selfless. But the character Don Juan was definitely not any of those things. In fact, he's depicted as a terrible, vile person that audiences should take great joy in seeing him get punished at the end of these plays. Most often, he would be violently dragged off the stage by a stone statue of a man that he'd killed in a sword fight, a perfect end for a truly villainous character. Mozart, though, wanted to update the story, make it more relevant for his time, the 1780s in Vienna. That's because he felt that opera and theater should be a way of putting a mirror up to the audience and saying, this is the way real human beings act. This is how real human beings feel and express themselves. So, Don Giovanni, or Juan, and indeed all the characters in the opera come across as real people, not as mythological or fictional characters. And Mozart focuses on one area of Giovanni's bad behavior, his treatment of women. In the opera, there are 3 women, Donna Anna, Donna Elvira, and Zerlina, and he treats all of them badly. When we first meet him, he's tried to sneak into Donna Anna's bedroom at night, and when she screams, her father wakes up and has a duel with Giovanni to defend her honor. Donna Elvira is a woman that Giovanni promised to marry at one time, and when she arrived for the wedding all dressed up in her bridal dress, he didn't bother to show up. He abandoned her. The peasant woman, Zerlina, has just gotten married. Giovanni sees her at her wedding party and decides to steal her away from her new husband, the poor, helpless Mazzetto. This is not a nice guy. He has a servant, Leporello, whom he presses to do some of his dirty work for him, but even Leporello finally can't abide Don Giovanni's behavior. The payoff in this opera is trying to guess what will happen next. Will Giovanni get away with all his crimes? Or will he finally be caught and punished for being so awful? The interesting thing about this opera is that we in the audience have to believe that all the other characters in the story must have found something attractive about Don Giovanni in the first place. How they discover how awful he is, they react in different ways. But that's something that happens to all of us in life, isn't it? Haven't you ever met someone who you thought at first was a good person, but then you discovered that he or she was dishonest, or a liar, or untrustworthy? And we hope that doesn't happen very often, but sometimes it does. And certainly, sometimes people, all of us, just make mistakes. But what Mozart is putting before us in this opera is a picture of someone who's not like us, but someone who is truly a villain through and through. And giving him music that is so beautiful, so seductive, that even we fall for him until we realize what awful things he's doing to all the other characters in the opera. Don Giovanni is a fascinating opera about a very dark character who we in the audience will allow into our lives for a couple of hours so that we can take away a few lessons about life, love, and human weakness.
Let's talk about the music of Don Giovanni. Mozart, just like all composers of opera, was very concerned about telling the story of the opera through his music. And this is kind of a dark story, isn't it? And it's about a very dark character. So I find it interesting that from the very first moment of the opera, even before the curtain goes up, we have an overture played by the orchestra that immediately sets that dark environment. Well, that's pretty dark, isn't it? And played by the full orchestra, it sounds even darker than it does on this piano. What happens next is even more interesting, and that's what begins to happen to the rhythm, the beat in the music. Mozart adds a kind of heartbeat rhythm to the music that makes it feel kind of suspenseful. Listen. It's a simple decision to add that little bit of rhythm, but it makes all the difference in the world. But then things change again. Mozart adds a new slithering melody that really attracts our attention. What can it mean? It's almost like he's about to release snakes into the audience. Worms, maybe. Listen to this, and let's see what you think. And soon after, Mozart makes yet another decision. He adds moving scale passages, scales that go up, then go down, adding yet more interest to this overture. What is Mozart doing here? Well, he's setting the scene. Before we see the first scene of the drama, he wants us to hear it first. And with every decision he makes, he builds the suspense. Our ears go right along with him, don't they? What he's doing with music almost seems visual. It's almost hypnotic, the way he plays with us in a kind of circular fashion, sucking us into this story of the evil nobleman Don Giovanni. Now, even though Mozart begins this opera in a dark and foreboding way, the opera doesn't stay that way throughout. In fact, he called this opera a dramma giocoso, a comic drama. There are lots of lighter comic bits in this opera, places where you will actually laugh. And in fact, the music for the main character, Giovanni, is, for the most part, light and even seductive. The most famous melody or tune in the opera is from his duet with the peasant girl, Zerlina, in which he tries to seduce her away from the man that she's only just married. Listen to this tune. It's so suave, romantic, and lyrical. It's Giovanni presenting his best possible face to his latest victim. Later on, when Giovanni is in a good mood and he wants everyone to come over to his palace for a party, he sings this tune, the so-called Champagne Aria, called that because the rhythm and the tempo of this music absolutely bubbles and froths, just like champagne. And at one point, he even picks up a mandolin and he sings a romantic little serenade to a woman on a balcony. Again, it's just a sweet melody, a beautiful tune that actually masks his true identity. So for such an awful man, Don Giovanni sure has a lot of beautiful music, doesn't he? Why do you think that is? Because we, the audience, have to fall in love with him just like the women in the opera do. At first glance, Don Giovanni looks like a man these women could fall in love with. At first glance, maybe we think we could even be friends with the Don. And Mozart wants that. He wants us to like him. Because when this dark character begins to show his true colors on stage, then we're forced to make a choice. Are we rooting for him to succeed? Or are we hoping that somehow he'll be caught up in his own evil and end up being destroyed in the end?
Don Giovanni is as fresh today as it was when it was first written. It's got terrific music and a challenging story that I'm sure will make you think a little bit as you exit the theater. So get ready. You're going to love it. I'll see you at the opera.